Hello, BookTube. I've got some new arrivals here, forthcoming books. I don't know what I'm going to call this particular kind of video that is not a mail opening video. I'm not opening any packages on camera. Way back in the olden days of this channel, the first few times that I shared new release book mail with you, I shared it this way. I didn't open packages on camera at first. I thought, way back when I was on this couch, but my girls were on either side of me. I didn't have this little bean up on the counter here. Way back then, I thought surely the process of opening the mail on camera will be too cumbersome. It wouldn't work. It turned out it did work. A lot of you were willing to put up with the falderall of me fumbling around with packages in order for the play-by-play, in order for the spontaneity. But before we did the package opening, we didn't do the package opening. So I have a stack of books here to show you, new releases, things that are out already, that sort of thing, and a periodical. And I don't know, new arrivals, something like that. I don't know what will it feels wrong to call it a mail haul because that evokes years and years of opening mail on camera. And I didn't do that for this. The last time I tried that was 2 days ago, and it resulted in a 40-minute rant video that I could not upload, as it has reliably done so in 2023, where I am not just being presented with books that are entirely posited in an alternate reality from the one all around us, but I am being not so tacitly demanded to subscribe to that reality. It's not just that I'm going to comment, oh, this book is in a weird alternate reality in which there were physics experiments being done in sub-Saharan Africa in the 14th century. There weren't. That is simply false. That is simply a fantasy. But this book is not a fantasy novel. This book is simply positing that as, oh, well, since we know that that's true, let's move on from there. Well, that didn't happen. That isn't true. And once upon a time, if a book had done that, I would have, the rules of the game would have been, well, okay, you as an author put this out for sale with a $30 price tag. You're demanding that readers pay attention to you. You want libraries to order this book. And it's built on flagrantly, hysterically, hilariously faulty premises. And so my role is to rake it over the coals, is to eviscerate it. As a warning to readers to give it a wide berth. Don't waste your time on it. Those rules have changed. The rules now are that I'm supposed to enthusiastically, vocally sustain it. I'm supposed to help the book in its Rosa Parks style struggle to rewrite the injustices of 17,000 years of human iniquity. That's not book reviewing. That's not reality. That's not a historical record. That's not anything like that. I don't know what that is. That's propaganda. And if I'm being, I don't want to ruin this video either. But if I'm being sent a piece of propaganda and the understanding is that I will either ignore it or I will savage it because it's obviously absurd, that's one thing. If I'm being sent a piece of propaganda with an eye squinted over its shoulder saying, well, we want you to sit up like a seal and clap for this thing, and if you don't, we're going to notice. And there's a mob right behind our back that will notice as well if we tell them to. That's a totally different thing. That's a totally different thing. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'm not saying that on-camera mail openings are out of the question. I don't know what I'm going to do about it. In the meantime, though, I still get lots of goodies that I want to show you. I want to show you some of those today. We'll start with the periodical, which is latest Harper's, that is giving me a sinking feeling. I don't know what to expect here. I will see. I haven't read it yet because of the cover. The cover is the new science wars, the COVID response, and its discontents. And I'm wondering if at the heart of this highfalutin article, do we say who this is by? Let's see. Doctor's Orders. It's by Jason Blakely. I don't know that name. I don't know anything about him. I worry that when you strip away the Harper's veneer of excellent prose and long length, what you will get here is COVID denialism. Some sort of COVID crackpottery. That is seeping into the mainstream more and more, I've noticed. There are ways that you can certainly criticize the international response to COVID, but COVID denialism is not one of those ways. That is just paving the way for disaster. It's paving the way for you to enter a world in which your kids need to worry about mumps or rubella or smallpox. And I don't know anymore. I don't know. The sinking feeling in my stomach is that I don't know whether or not Harper's would greenlight an article like that. And the reason that I don't know is because of a recent article in the last issue of Harper's, which was about the war in Ukraine. And one of the co-writers was Benjamin Schwartz, my boy. And that piece was greenlit by the editorial board at Harper's, and that piece said that the expansion of NATO is entirely to blame. That you should have known what was coming. You should have known what Vladimir Putin, the dictator of Russia, would do. That you push him too far, you're going to get this response. No. No. Membership at NATO is voluntary. And Vladimir Putin doesn't get to dictate the foreign policy of other independent nations. If they're leaping and tripping over themselves to join NATO when they're on his border, that should tell you something about what his border is like. It should tell you what he's like, not what NATO is like. The very idea that an armed invasion of a sovereign country across your borders is somehow justified by... Anyway, that article got past the editorial board at Harper's and got a blizzard of letters in this issue. I want to read you just one of those from a U.S. ambassador. Benjamin Schwartz and Christopher Lane claimed that Russia had warned the United States that since the end of the Cold War, that it would violate fundamental principles of international law if we did not let it dominate Ukraine, and that we should have respected Russia's threats to invade and destroy its neighbors. This line of argument inaccurately reflects history. Russia recognized the independence of the former Soviet republics by ratifying binding international agreements, including the Paris Charter, the NATO-Russia Founding Act, and the Budapest Memorandum. By invading Ukraine, Russia went back on its promise to respect Ukrainian sovereignty. To blame the United States and our allies for the current conflict because we crossed Russia's red lines is to endorse those boundaries and to justify Russia's barbarous and illegal actions. I expected better from Harper's Magazine. And, Mr. Ambassador, I'm right on the same page with you there. I did as well. I'm not talking about censorship. Schwartz and his co-writer could have found a venue for that piece. I'm talking about the fact that that is obscene international reasoning. It is obscenely appeasing. And it appeared in Harper's. So since it did, and since I read it with my jaw falling more and more open, I don't know for sure that this piece won't be equally obscene, which is a horrible thing to think about. There's a horrible possibility to entertain, but I guess I have to. Then we've got the books. And it's a mixture here of stuff that's already out, stuff that's immediately just about to come out, and stuff that's down the line. But I want to start with something extra. I did a little thing yesterday in a video that I kind of liked. It's very rare for this channel. I did an actual giveaway yesterday. It was buried in the middle of a Brattle book haul, so I don't imagine many people saw it. The reason that I don't, lots of channels do giveaways on BookTube, and the reason that I don't usually do them is because they're kind of beside the point. I'm constantly mailing out books. This parasocial relationship works in exactly the reverse order from what it should be. You people studiously ignore my Patreon. Studiously refrain from sending me the outdated tech that you ignore and that I require. You studiously avoid doing that sort of stuff. Instead, I send things to you. And the reason why I don't tend to do giveaways on this channel is because if somebody tells me in an email, I leave my email on every video, a lot of you, do me the great pleasure of emailing me regularly about anything. It doesn't have to be about some video that I've made or even about books at all. The one thing that I ask of the people who email me is to have a little patience. I get a lot of emails in every day. Have a little patience and also maybe a little sense of reality. Maybe that's too much to ask of bookish people. If you send me a 5,000-word email, I'm not going to respond. Not only because a 5,000-word email is ridiculous on its face and also falls immediately mentally into the category of work, but also because in the past when I have tried to do that, the recipients haven't exactly covered themselves in glory. I've lost track of how many times someone has sent me a 5,000-word email. I've picked one element of the email that at least I can respond to in a timely fashion without writing a dissertation of my own when I write for a living. I send back a comment on that one element. The person writes back immediately and says, very interesting, how about my other points? Like I'm doing effing homework. apart from apart from 5,000 word emails, the one thing that people tend to be really good about is that I might not get to your email right away, or I might not respond at the length that you want. But even so, there's a lively correspondence that goes on in my inbox, which is great. Just absolutely great. It's like I often tell myself scandalously, I'm already getting out of BookTube everything that I want without making videos. The videos are extra. Between Voxer and the email and visits, I'm already getting all the stuff that I really want. But the videos are lots of fun, and a lot of you will watch a video, you'll see that I mentioned such a book, such and such a book, and you'll email me and say, if you ever find a copy of that, I would love it if you could send it to me. If you're in the lower 48, if you're in the continental United States, and you get your mailing address correct. Because I've had that happen many times before too, not just internationally, but even nationally, even internally. I've had people say, I would really like such and such a book. I say, well, I found a copy. You don't have any used bookstores where you live. You're a long drive away from the nearest one, and its stock never changes. I get that. I'm perfectly willing to help. I have found an extra copy. I will mail it to you. What's your mailing address? Person will send me their mailing address. I will send off the book. It never reaches them, or it comes back to me. I will then contact them, or they will contact me and say it's been a long time. I will say, here's a screenshot of the address that you sent me to mail this to. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I left out a detail. Oh, okay, we'll try again. No, if you do that, if I ask you for a good mailing address for packages and you don't get it right, your own address right, I'm not going to try again. I know that sounds horrible, but I'm not. I mean, honestly, there are limits, right? I mean, that's just absurd. If I ask you what your mailing address is, you learn your address when you're 5 years old. If you're at 35 years old and I ask you, a stranger is willing to send you a free book if you'll give him your mailing address, and you get the address wrong so that he's out of pocket for the mailing costs, I'm not going to do it again. You get one chance to get your address right. And foreign addresses, forget about it. Oh my God. Years ago, I went through it with so many people. One person, we went through, I think, 3 rounds where I said, okay, good mailing address would be great. And I'll send this to you, and I'll just eat the cost of international shipping. And they said, okay, if you're sure. And they sent me their mailing address. I sent off the book. 2 months passed. They never got it. They emailed me and said, well, I never got it. Did you send it? And I said, yes, I did. I sent it to this address. They wrote back and said, oh, no, I meant to add this line. That was wrong. The original address that I sent you was incomplete. I meant to add this line. Maybe if something else crops up, you can send that to me, and this is the address. Then something else crops up, and I write to them and say, here's the screenshot of the corrected address that you sent me. I have something else you might want. Is this the address? And they write back and say, oh, there's yet another thing that I didn't add even to the corrected address. Here, I'll add it now, and then you can send this. Of course, I think that happened 3 times. All 3 times I wrote to the person and said, I've already thrown the book that I got for you in the garbage. If you can't get your mailing address right in 3 tries, I'm not going to believe that you're getting it right on the 3rd try. And I'm not going to waste, just if I want to waste $50, I'll just put it out on the sidewalk. But aside from those nightmare, I don't know why I went down the avenue of nightmare scenarios. Mostly it's very easy and very good. Lots and lots of fun. I love mailing books to people. Absolutely do. I shouldn't say that because, of course, I want this parasocial relationship to work the way it should. I want money to be flowing into me. Why should Jared Henderson have all the money? I want you people to stop ignoring my Patreon. I want you to stop not sending me your tech. But nevertheless, I love mailing people books. Absolutely love it. There's no site more enjoyable for me than a stack of packages ready to go out. It's, believe it or not, that is even more appealing to me than a stack of packages coming in. So that's the reason I haven't done formal giveaways on this channel, because if you want something, you just have to email me. And if I don't have an ebook of it, and if you don't want an ebook of it, I can almost certainly find a copy of the book sooner or later at the Brattle. What I say for me all the time, the Brattle will provide, applies to you as well. But I did a giveaway yesterday. It was kind of fun. I announced it in the title of the video. I will announce it in the title of this video. I want to do a giveaway again. I got a double of a book that I am not going to keep. And I imagine, I liked it, and I love the author. But I imagine that some of you out there it will probably be much, much more your cup of tea than mine. We've seen it on this channel. It's this. It's the finished copy of The Princess by Wendy Holden. I have the advanced copy. That's fine by me. I don't I don't need more than that. And this is a novel, as you can see, you can probably tell. This is a novel about Princess Diana. It's very favorable to Princess Diana. It's very much a novel set in the line of her being a poor, put-upon ingenue who enters this cutthroat world of British royalty, which is a favorite story. Certainly it has many books along those lines. If you love that story, if you like this kind of thing, if you have a sweet tooth for Princess Diana or for Windsor fiction, anything like that, if you see this, if this is the sort of thing you would pick up and consider in your bookstore, I have the finished copy. This is not the advanced copy. This is the thing that you would get at your bookstore, and I'm willing to do a giveaway. So just email me and let me know. So that is one of the new things I wanted to show you. I got the finished copy of this, my review of it. I wrote a full-length review of it that will be appearing in Big Canoe News in Northern Georgia in our August issue, because I think this is an August release. Is that right? I didn't know that since I reviewed. Yes, this is an August release. So I was going to write just a little review of it, 300 words, but it went on at length. I wrote a full-length review of it. So that's the giveaway. I'll put giveaway in the title of the video. Then we'll go on to the books, just a few books, just to show you. One is coming out in November. It's very late. This is a slim volume of poetry. But this is a poet that I actually like, a contemporary poet who I actually like. So getting a slim volume of poetry was actually pleasing to me. I don't know that I haven't read the pub sheet, but we already know that the sell sheet for slim volumes of poetry is usually grueling. What can you say about contemporary poetry? It's not about anything. So what can you say about it? You have to. It's your job to write one of these sheets, but there's very little to say. The poet is Ishyan Hutchinson, who I think I've reviewed before. I've certainly talked about him on this channel. And this is his new book, School of Instructions. It comes out in April. So let's try this pub speak for this. In 2016, the author was commissioned by the Imperial War Museum in London to do research on West Indian participation in the First World War. From this research, the pub sheet refers to him as Ishyan. That's his first name. Hutchinson is his last name. But I've never actually had line and calzones with him, but I guess I have to call him Ishyan. Fashioned what could fairly be called an epic, reading at times like a high modernist ode, a sumptuous lyric, an experimental novel. Okay, epic, ode, lyric, and novel are all four radically different things. This is not an epic. This is not an epic. This book offers a book-length poem as a vital and visionary mode, able to incorporate history and the voices thereof. Okay, the main document that Ishyan, I guess we're going to call him Ishi, hey Ishi, drew on for the archive was a diary written by a white British soldier who observed Caribbean conscripts in the Middle Eastern campaign, the only theater of war, World War I, in which they bore arms. The poem counterposes these biblicized troop movements and reports with the experience of Godspeed, a boy living in rural Jamaica in the 1990s. Sure don't mean God send? You wouldn't by any chance have lived in rural Jamaica in the 1990s, would you, Ishi? You sure don't mean God send instead of Godspeed? In Ishyan's contrapuntal versettes, I guarantee you there's not one contrapuntal versette in here. Goodspeed and the asynchronous wartime experiences of his countrymen blend into a balletic tour de force. Okay, well, it doesn't matter what the nonsense speak of the pub sheet is. I'm still going to love this. I might not love the finished product, but I know that I like reading what this author does. I probably won't get to this for a while, but a slim volume of poetry to start things off. Then this next one I think is also a November release, late October, Halloween, of a book that is nonfiction, but even if you're not a nonfiction reader, you might want to put this on your wish list because you have lived through this. If you're a reader of a certain age, if you're a reader over the age of 30, you have lived through this. This is going to be telling you, this is going to be a history of your experience in retail bookstores in the last 45 years. In a work of history. That's pretty irresistible. If you're interested in that, you might want to put this on your list. This is by Dan Sinykin, and this is big fiction. The requisite for 2023 books is enormous subtitles. The enormous subtitle is How Conglomeration Changed the Publishing Industry and American Literature. And this is designed to look like a certain imprint of trade paperback, so-called literary fiction from 40 years ago. And I don't have the sheet for this, but we can read the back of the book, because this is our life in bookstores. In the late 1950s, Random House editor Jason Epstein would talk jazz with Ralph Ellison or chat with Andy Warhol while pouring drinks in his office. By the 1970s, editors were poring over profit and loss statements. The electronics company RCA bought Random House in 1965, and then other large corporations purchased other formerly independent publishers. As multinational conglomerates consolidated the industry, the business of literature and literature itself transformed. So Sinekin isn't just saying that retail bookselling changed, which it certainly did. Bertelsmann moved in, RCA moved in. Big companies that don't think about literature, they just think about profit and loss, started buying up publishing houses. So no doubt the book industry changes, but I think Sinekin is going to make a case in this book that it changed what you read in bookstores as well. The author explores how changes in the publishing industry have affected fiction, literary form, and what it means to be an author. Giving an inside look at the industry's daily routines, personal dramas, and institutional crises, he reveals how conglomeration has shaped what kinds of books and writers are published. He examines 4 different sectors of the publishing industry: mass market books by brand name authors like Danielle Steele, trade publishers that encourage genre elements in literary fiction, nonprofits such as Grey Wolf that aspired to protect literature from market pressures, and the distinctive niche of employee-owned W.W. Norton. They're going to get a lion's share of the attention in this book. He emphasizes how women and people of color navigated shifts in publishing, arguing that writers such as Toni Morrison allegorized their experiences in their fiction. And other names that come up here are E.L. Doctorow, Judith Krantz, Renata Alver, Stephen King, Joan Didion, Cormac McCarthy, Chuck Palahniuk, Patrick O'Brien, and Walter Mosley. So, in other words, if you were buying books in bookstores 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, this is the story of how that experience changed. And this author is saying it didn't just change in terms of what you saw when you walked in the front door of a Crocs and Brentanos or Barnes & Noble or Borders, that it also changed what you saw when you looked at the new release table, what the books were like. So, it's again, this is fairly niche nonfiction. This is, a history of retail publishing in the United States. But I would argue that if you are a reader of a certain age in the United States, this is nonfiction you might want to put on your list. I bet you will be noticing things on every page that you noticed in real time. Those are always fascinating, whether it's a history of the change in personal computers or the development of cell phones. Books that are addressing history that has happened in real time in your life are always fascinating. Then we'll just finish up with 2 more. This is going to be a longer video than this. I want to show you this thing. This came out on the 4th of July, ironically enough, or maybe not. So I think we've seen this already, but I want to show you the finished copy so that you know what it's like, and I can read you a bit of it here. I think this came out on the 4th of July. Yes, it did. This is C.W. Goodyear's big biography of President Garfield. We saw A Man of Iron last year, which had a digitalized, colorized, close, personalized version of a photograph of the person involved. And this time it's done with Garfield. To really make it look like he's just looking at you from the cover, I really sort of applaud this. I hope that it continues. But let's see here. This is, according to the folks at Simon & Schuster, this is the first popular biography in almost 40 years about a neglected but fascinating president. Garfield's life is a sweeping story about the timeless difficulties of uniting America, the promise and failure of Reconstruction, the double-edged nature of political compromise, and a flawed man's pursuit of the American dream, and his murder upon fulfilling it. Garfield, of course, is one of our murdered presidents. This book takes readers through a singular life. James Garfield was the last president born in a log cabin. Raised by a single mother on the Ohio frontier, he became a teacher, abolitionist preacher, Civil War general. After the war, Garfield served not only as the youngest congressman in the country, but also as one of the most progressive, helping pass crucial Reconstruction legislation and founding the first Department of Education in order to educate ex-slaves. Over the next 15 years, in those times an incredibly long congressional career, he transitioned into becoming a vital political peacemaker in an increasingly divided country. Garfield even brokered the settlement of America's first disputed presidential election. His reputation eventually resulted in his unwilling election to the White House, where his attempt to keep the peace among Republicans culminated in his assassination. I don't know what book the pub sheet writer is thinking about. I'm thinking about a book that came out, well, about 40 years ago. Probably this person might be right. There's a book called Garfield of Ohio. It was very good. It's intensely political. It sounds like there's going to be a lot more of the person, of the man, in this book. But Garfield of Ohio was quite good. There was also an unintentionally funny campaign biography called something like Boat Boy on the Ohio, or something. It made heavy work of that log cabin and Ohio's Garfield's barefoot boyhood. I don't remember what that one was called. You couldn't consult it as a historical document except for the historical interest of whichever hack writer, and I think I know the hack writer. It's not coming to mind. There's historical interest in how you would get a hack writer to do a hagiography of such a figure. But Garfield of Ohio was quite a while ago, so this is well timed. This is well worth it. I did not get an advance copy of this book, so even though it came out on the 4th of July, I'm only now grappling with it. When the 4th of July is 2 weeks ago. So I wanted to show it to you to make sure you know this is going to be in your bookstores, especially if you are, I know quite a few of you really like to read presidential biographies. This is a big, serious one of the few that have appeared so far this year that will be out in your bookstores. And then the last thing, also in your bookstores, I just had to show you. This is the finished copy of the new Michael Katz translation of the Brothers Karamazov. Big, thick thing that was obviously designed to look a lot like his translation of Crime and Punishment, which came out a couple of years ago, and which had a very distinctive cover feature, which was a dust jacket of the hardcover that had a blurb by yours truly. Blurbs by me are not exactly rare in the book world, but usually it's that a hardcover comes out, I review it, the publicist for the book spots my review, they like a line, they think it would work well in a blurb on the paperback. So 6 months to 9 months later, I get blurbed on the paperback of a book. That is going to happen quite a few times this year, and I'm always grateful when it does. I absolutely love that. That is a way that a critic can survive even after their actual book reviews have been, squashed onto the bottom of the birdcage or thrown away, wrapped in fish or whatnot. That's a way that they can survive, as you know, because you have pulled many, many used books from a pile in a used bookstore, flipped it over, and seen a blurb by a long-dead author, sometimes with their name on it. I know that when I buy, over the decades that I bought used bookstores, that I bought used books, I started to recognize reviewer names and associate whether or not their blurb on some book that I ended up loving had been accurate. So when I saw their name on another blurb, even then, decades after their review appeared, it would have the desired effect of guiding me. And the reason I mentioned it is because this is not a case of that. This is the hardcover that's out in bookstores now. But I am still blurbed on the paperback, on the dust jacket. You've got a Harvard professor, you've got a Brandeis professor, and you've got me down at the bottom there. So we've got you get 3 blurbs there on the back of this. So I am 2 for 2 with Dostoevsky here. I'm on the hardcover of Crime and Punishment. I'm also on the front cover of the paperback of Crime and Punishment. And who knows where I'll be positioned. Who knows where I'll be positioned for the paperback of this thing. But at least you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, when you are in your new bookstore, you're going to see both of these on the front pages, the front tables of your new bookstore. And you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this book has the Steve seal of approval because it's right there on the cover. You don't even need to email me. So I wanted to show you that. So those are some new releases. I don't know what this kind of a video will be. It's not phasing out mail openings. I'm determined to keep doing that. I'll just need to, recover my temper or whatnot. But for now, it's an interesting ramble through new things. We have the Katz translation of Brothers Karamazov. We have a big new biography of President Garfield. More on this later on this channel. We have Dan Sinekin's book, Big Fiction, a piece of nonfiction that will apply even to the most reluctant nonfiction reader. We have Ishian Hutcherson. That's Mr. Hutcherson to you. His School of Instructions. This is his new volume of poetry. One of the things I like about him, that ridiculous pub sheet notwithstanding, one of the things I like about this poet is that he seems to have big ideas for what he wants poetry to do, what he wants his own poetry to do. My foremost complaint with most contemporary poets is that it seems like one enormous, protracted exercise in egotism. And despite naming a character Godspeed that I think is going to be an author stand-in here, I do not detect that in this author. He seems to want his poetry to do things and to say things, which sounds ridiculous, but since 1956, that has not been true. That is not what American poetry tends to want to do, either one of those things. And this guy does seem to want to do that. I think he's, in other words, a serious poet. silly as that sounds. And then finally, the last thing that we looked at here is a giveaway, which is this. The finished copy of Wendy Holden's, this is a trade paperback original, the finished copy of her novel about Princess Diana. So let me know if you want me to send this to you, provided you meet the strict guidelines. You must be in the continental United States. You must probably not have received the last book. Yesterday's giveaway was Gates of Fire. Probably you shouldn't be the same person that got that. You should probably be someone different. And also, you should know your own home address. Okay? Are you older than 5? You should know your own home address. If you can meet that incredibly high bar, then I'd be happy to send this to you. I'll take the pub sheet out of it and mail it to you. So that's it. That is just a bunch of random new stuff to talk about. I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.